All right, well, welcome everybody and good morning. Hopefully everyone's had a great first day if you were here. And morning, we have some excellent content. Basically, Dr. Bill Gregg from Healthcare Corporation of America is my partner in crime here this morning. He is my co-chair from the start for the Data Usability Workgroup, which is part of Interoperability Matters. So if you know Sequoia, you've heard over the course of the last day things like information sharing, public health. Those types of work groups are all under Interoperability Matters. So data usability is one of those. And let me get the clicker for the slides. I forgot about that. Thank you, sir. All right. So what we're going to cover today is giving you a little context of how we have gotten here today. So there's been work going on with the Data Usability Workgroup since 2020. So what we're going to kind of talk with, we're not going to PowerPoint you to death, but we're going to leave these slides with you so that you can take them home, share them with your colleagues if you're not already following the work, so that you can help educate those and help us continue growing this adoption of the data usability work that we really want to do more of. So as I mentioned, I'm Didi Davis. I've been here 10 years, some of you have heard already. I'm very proud to be part of the Sequoia family, and you know, working for Marianne is like a dream, so it's awesome that way. We very happy to say that there's a lot of work that we've done together, and Dr. Gregg has been instrumental. Quite frankly, when we were publishing the guide, this man was on phone calls with me multiple times each week. So I want to give him a shout out as, you know, our volunteer of the year, you know, really showing that there is a lot of work behind the scenes for this work that we put out. So I'm very grateful for your work and your support, really, quite frankly. Would you like to introduce anything more about yourself?
Yeah, I think I know many of you. This has been a great thing for my career, being a part of this community. And it's really been a big jump start to doing work that I really love. My background, I'm an internist, an engineer before that, so I kind of take that engineering approach to things. I work at HCA Healthcare right now and lead our interoperability efforts. And I really think, you know, one of the things that I've learned and I think we've seen is that as we build this community, that's how we're going to solve these things. And hopefully that comes clear with what we're really trying to accomplish with data usability. Yeah. Because we need your help.
Absolutely. It takes a village, a team to really make this happen. So I'm a call of action right now. You're going to hear about the Data Usability Workgroup this morning, but you're also going to hear about our Taking Root movement that Marianne's going to lead a panel about at 1 o'clock this afternoon. So just wanted to let everyone know that there is two parts to this, and I'm going to give you the background, which will hopefully set you up for this afternoon's panel and so forth. So a little bit about the data usability, the history. I'm going to start here, and then I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Gregg to give us a little bit more from a provider perspective, quite frankly. As I mentioned earlier, the work group was launched in October of 2020. The board of directors for Sequoia Project, as well as our membership, prioritized this. And you'll notice we are asking you for priority surveys already now again. So we do take all of that information to heart, and this was a top priority. And so we took that seriously. We put together the work group. Marianne has been very instrumental in helping me with getting it launched, and I've kind of taken on as a point of contact, but we work real closely together to make sure we involve all of the right people, all the stakeholders that we need to continue growing it. It was really chartered to develop what I would call the pragmatic guidance, things that you need in implementation guides clearly defined so that you can have clinical content, the data itself moving from one healthcare stakeholder organization to another healthcare information exchange or healthcare entity, whatever, on the backside. So that's the main goal, so overall. We really think about this as looking at priority use cases. So the charter, when it was launched, had 3 use cases: provider to provider exchange, provider to public health, and public health back to provider, as well as healthcare entity to consumer. And the reason we say healthcare entity is it could be that app on your phone. It could be that portal that's part of a physical therapy site. It could be a CVS clinic down the road. Healthcare entity talking to a consumer is what we're looking at the type of data that's being exchanged there. But we want to take this as these use cases and how do we get these adopted within an 18-month timeline. So we're taking baby steps, little baby steps at a time, because that's how you move the industry. If you throw too many things at once with all of these things that we're doing today with TEFCA and everything else, it's a lot for the vendor community to take on. So we want to make sure that these implementers, these vendors, and I kind of use developers or vendors loosely, networks, governance frameworks, hopefully can start looking at some of this information that we're publishing, and it'll help inform the standard organizations. I'm proud to say that as of right now, HL7 has been such a powerful collaborator with us. They have things called implementation-a-thons, and we've taken some of the use cases from our guide and actually brought it to those implementation-a-thons for folks to put things together. The very last one that we did in August of this year, a new style sheet was created to solve one of the use case problems that Texas Health Services Authority commented on. And actually there's an appendix in version 1 guide that actually talks more about that. So I'm going to kind of turn it over to you and let you kind of fill in maybe some of the, more around the use case and some of that as well.
Well, and also what it is, what we're talking about with data usability. And I remember when we first, at the 2019 Sequoia meeting, Marianne approached several of us and had seen that there was a gap. And I think that was the initial seed of where this went. And I'm very appreciative for that, both that foresight from Marianne, Sequoia, and Didi, to really be able to build that into what it is. And it's not done yet. Well, this is barely scratching the surface. But for my mind, what we're really seeing is helping our clinicians, our patients, the other people who are using data to support their cognitive work. If you talk to any physician or nurse, what they really bring to the table is their experience, their knowledge, and the cognition to make sense of things as they come together. But right now, the signal to noise is not good. And I was sharing a story with Didi back more than 20 years ago when I was a fellow after I'd finished my residency. I was trying to earn extra money to pay off those student loans, and I would moonlight in the ER at our local VA hospital. And so be able to work the night shift. So I had a patient come in at about 2 a.m. who had gotten care at a VA across the country. And I didn't have any data, and the patient really couldn't tell me very much. So I said, well, I learned from someone that I could get information. So I reached out, and from that VA, they made the match and actually started pulling back data. Well, at that time, the only way that data came was I could dump it to a printer. It was really like a Unix core dump. This was about 2 a.m. At 6 a.m., it was still printing. And so now, this is not a knock. This was the Vista system. This was great. I was ecstatic that I could get this data, but it didn't help my cognitive work. I didn't find what I needed to know. But it was a glimpse to me of where we could go. And if you talk to clinicians now, in spots, we are doing better, where we're really supporting the workflow. But the future is here, it's just not evenly distributed. A lot of it is, I've had many doctors tell me, if you give me more data, I'm gonna leave. I don't need more data, I need more information, I need signal. And so that's what this is about, is how can we take this and actually make it better? And I think the thing that I want to add, and I appreciate the plug that Matt gave earlier, and I did want to call out that my socks match, but that is probably accidental. But, is the importance of that. But it's not something we can say or blame, well, the vendor needs to do better, or the provider needs to do better, or whoever created the lab at the original system, they need to do a better job. We all need to do a better job. And that's where we need to come together, and that's what we're trying to do in data usability, is get everybody together, take off the hat that you wear, and put on the hat of the community, and let's build this together. So we would not be here without all the work that's been happening, but this is the logical next step. And so I'd really encourage those of you who aren't involved, everybody is needed in this. and it'll take shape in ways we haven't anticipated, but we're excited about it.
Yeah, we are excited. And it's a long challenge. It's not a one and done. This is an ongoing process. So what we're going to talk about this morning, good lead in, is not only giving you the background on what was published real quickly, but also talking through what we're doing in cycle 2. So what was published in little over a year ago, December 14th of last year, version 1 of the Data Usability Implementation Guide was published. And some of you that were here last year saw this slide, so it's not anything new, but just to remind us, we went through phases to develop version 1. Phase 1 was kind of getting all the pain points. We had 34 different pain points provided to us as submissions of things to consider. So what we did working with the leadership, the co-chairs, Dr. Adam Davis, I want to shout out to, he is our other co-chair. He's a practicing pediatrician from Sutter Health. They worked with us to put together topic categories where we put those 34 pain points into, is it something to reduce the impact of a duplicate? How do you include provenance so that you maintain trust for that data? So these are the topic categories. There are 6 in the version 1 guide. And what we did was we have like a table of contents that includes some of those appendices. So I mentioned the Texas Health Services Authority earlier. They're in one of the appendices as here's how a discharge summary should look like in the state of Texas. They had all the CIOs across all the hospitals in the state come up with their recommendation. And we're taking those recommendations and building new work into version 2 as well. So that's what's in version 1. The use cases, I've already told you the high level, but each of the 6 topic categories, the way that the guide is laid out, is there's a problem statement, there's a use case, there's guidance on what you should do to improvement with testable conformance statements. And Sequoia project is in process right now. I'm working with my tooling vendor. We should get a prototype of a validator before the end of the year that we can QA internally and make it available for those folks who are running through the taking root movement to have something to test themselves, to see what they know, seeing how well does their data conform to this. And these are the implementers that we're expecting to kind of do that in a way. And you'll hear more about that this afternoon. The work group membership today, I'm happy to say, as of December last year, we had about a little over 250 and a little over 350. So 250 actual organizations as of December last year, and about 350. We've grown to now almost 400 organizations just since last December, and over 450, almost 500 participants. And each week we have about 50, or each monthly meeting that happens one week, the first Thursday of every month, actually has a little over 50 participants on it. They're not always the same either. It's interesting because there's people that come at different times. Maybe they're looking at the agendas because we do publish them ahead of time. But they do represent a very broad stakeholder representation. So now I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Gregg and let you hear a little bit more about what we're doing.
Yeah, so as Didi said, we're now on version 2 and you'll hear later about the Taking Root initiative, so how we're going to move. We've got to build this as a longitudinal framework. So things will come out, how do we get them into practice, how do we get everybody along, but let's keep building what we need to build. And so, we learned a lot in the first one, and I think we've added a lot of focus and some breadth to what we're discussing. So we still track things in an active Google spreadsheet, so anyone can access. You don't have to come to the meetings. You can add your input externally. Anyone with a link can access that. Some of the direction we've gone, in our first version, we focused on CCDA primarily because IHE was the primary way we were moving data. But now with FHIR really on the cusp, we're adding FHIR guidance to it. And so we want to, as much or as little, how much we put in is driven by who's in our workgroup members. So add your voice. If we're not going far enough in one direction, tell us. One other focus, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that, is around laboratory data exchange. It's definitely a pain point for a lot of users. It's an important area in that cognitive arc that I talk about that clinicians use to make decisions, and so how can we make that better? It's really a good jumping off point because it uses semantics, metadata, and other things that gets into some of the complexities, and there are so many different stakeholders, bringing them all together, but we'll talk more about that. We're also adding in some things about the receiving system guidance. What is the best practices for how a receiving system that receives that data can render it for their users. Now, this is something where, a lot of the vendors, this is proprietary. This is how they distinguish themselves. But there's probably a floor. What's the minimum that everybody should do? Let's make sure that everybody can reach that of kind of the best practices. And then you can go beyond that. And then finally, we're really making sure a lot of the things we do align with the standards, in particular US CDI. And we've given, as a work group, feedback about that, but also it's a way for us to move forward in ways that the vendors are able to support, because it's matching within their requirements come online. Go to the next slide. Yeah. So our laboratory Tiger team, we've had 2 meetings so far. And I would say that the second meeting we had, there was a lot of energy in the room. We had a lot of give and take. It was really very enjoyable. So this is a good example of when you look at kind of the vertical integration of a process, and all the way from the lab system the laboratory system that is running the lab on the analyzer, how they encode that and then send that data. It could be HL7. It could be a lot of different ways. It comes from going to the ordering physician, how they're using it within their system, then how it's sent downstream. How do all those different stakeholders, and they're all beholden to different regulatory bodies. It could be CLIA, LOINC, SHIELD is involved. How can we bring all those people together and say, okay, the system as it is right now is not working as well as it can. How do we make it better incrementally, as Didi described, those baby steps, but how can we make it better, referencing all those, what can those individual systems do? Now, it may be that we've got to find compromises where the lab system may not do everything exactly the way they think it should be done, but they say, well, this is a reasonable compromise that'll work for the downstream systems. And so if we could find that, and I think there was a lot of energy in the discussion that really we could reach that. And so this Tiger team will continue to meet monthly. It will go into our guide, our version 2 of the guide, but it's really focused on lab. We decided to spin out the Tiger team simply because it would consume all the rest of our discussion. So we really had to have a separate thread to do that. But we're really excited about that as a direction and as kind of a template for doing other areas of specificity.
Yeah.
And then, we kind of, as we look at, what is the clinical scenario that we're trying to address? And it's really looking at how can you support that quality of care with labs and the issues with formatting. What metadata do we send? What is the semantic content? How do we use that semantic content? How can we group and split labs in a way that is safe? And right now, everybody kind of reinvents it themselves and does different things. Well, what are the best practices? The opportunities exist across HL7 V2. That's how a lot of the lab information systems send data out to EHRs, but also CCDA and FHIR. So if we can get those best practices in format and content, the consistency in the use of the metadata, and then the use and maintenance of those semantic mappings and value sets, we think that those pieces could allow us to really create that infrastructure that we need.
Yeah, and I mean, I think, Bill, you've done a great job of kind of saying, this is really a hot mess right now, to be honest. And we're up for the challenge. So that's why we have the Tiger team. We have almost 40 different organizations participating. The only thing we're really lacking, and Dr. Davis did some outreach just the last week, we want people from LabCorp and Quest, the 2 larger labs. We want to make sure we have some of their buy-in as well. But we have a great representation, and I think you said it right. The energy is really great. And I think we have the opportunity to make a little bit of a change. We'll see what we can do. It may be very, very basic, but if we just start putting the roadmap together, because this is not one and done. Our version 2 guide is looking to be published next year, but then we'll do a version 3 guide. So this is something that will be, we can't do this overnight. It's going to take some time, but be patient and work with us and help make it happen. So real quickly, just to let everyone know, we are in phase 2. So we're going through the same 4 phases. Prioritization of the pain points, we've already finished. We are now in process as of July of this year. We started the actual writing. Let's scope what we're going to put in version 2. So we're getting questions and input from folks to date. By next July, we're hoping to put pencil down on the draft. put it out for public comment for 45 to 60 days from July-August timeframe. That's phase 3. And then phase 4, we'll finalize the guide and we'll publish it sometime between after August, after the public comment, sometime before December of 2024. Don't have exact dates because it'll depend on how long it takes us to do all the writing and reaching a consensus, because that was the hardest thing. Reaching consensus is not as easy as you think it might be sometimes. Our website, if you go to sequoiaproject.org, there is a link on the bottom of this slide. All of our meeting information, it's a self-service. You can pull the calendar information down to follow our work. You'll notice the Lab Tiger team data, the recordings, as well as the slides are all publicly available, and anyone can participate. This is an open work group for everyone to participate. And with this, I'm going to kind of put in a plug again. This afternoon at 1 o'clock, Marianne will have a panel of some of the folks for the Taking Root movement. So this picture, I think, is worth 1,000 words. So I'm going to kind of leave this for a second. But if you think about what we've just talked about, Dr. Gregg and myself, we've talked about what's on this side of the slide, the Data Usability Workgroup. We're developing the guidance. That's what the workgroup is doing. But in parallel, we're also getting the implementation teed up. We don't want this guide to sit on a shelf and collect dust. We want people to actually adopt it, implement it, tell us where we can improve it so we can update version 2 and add new stuff to it to help, those future efforts that we alluded to in version 1. So Taking Root, we're very happy to have AHIMA as our co-sponsor with that. They've really been instrumental in helping us actually do a lot of the extra effort to make things happen in parallel. They worked with us to host a workshop at their conference in October. We had an in-person summit for the folks that are signing up to be implementers and sponsors and supporters of the work. So that's kind of, Taking Root is what you're going to hear about at 1 o'clock. So just kind of giving you a little bit of the difference. And they are both meeting. Taking Root is having their community of practice meetings every month as well. So 3 weeks a month, there's one meeting, and Dr. Gregg comes to all of them with me. So I'm very grateful again for him taking time out of his valuable day. And for all of you who've already been following the work, and if you're not already doing so, even if you're not the right stakeholder, talk to your people inside your organization and see if there's something of interest. All of you can be a supporter. Because guess what? All of you are patients. So even if it's the healthcare entity to consumer, we're all consumers. So I challenge you to that. So I wanted to kind of talk through and mention that the work group, it is very offline. So we mentioned the Google spreadsheet. I wanted to kind of mention that we are looking for comments for all of the topic categories that we're working on now. All the recordings, not to say that you have to listen to them, but if you want to kind of jump in and need some hand-holding, I'm happy to jump on a phone call and kind of give you the breadcrumb trail to get you caught up if needed. So with that, we're going to turn it over to questions. Raise your hand and Amber or Sully will get you a microphone. Come on, there has to be questions. There's one over there. And then there'll be a second one over there.
Good morning. Hillary Greer, HCA Healthcare. Wanted to talk a little bit about the lab space, so really excited about the Tiger team that's been kicked off. What do you see as the biggest challenge in that space right now?
Let you answer that one.
Yeah, I think it's the semantic content and how we can harmonize the data, because there's a lot of, different people have different perspectives about how precise we need to be. If you talk to a clinician, they're more lumpers than splitters. But if you talk to a laboratory expert, they are much more focused on the granularity, the importance of the different analyzer. And I don't believe either is wrong. We've got to find what's the fair compromise that we can make this useful without losing the important detailed signal. I think we've got so much data flowing, we should never lose information. But that doesn't mean that we can't collapse things to make it more useful. And so what's the guidance for that? So how do I configure my system? And if I'm a vendor, how do I develop it so that I can still do it safely, but I can get the clinicians what they need, but not lose information and make it unsafe?
Okay. There was one more question then, and there's one over here.
Yeah, hi, Shane from Smile. Real quick one here for you. How long will it take? And by that, meaning, What's the milestone that you're looking for the first, say, generation of IGs that are going to come out? Has it been defined? You know, what the core list of potential first set of use cases is? And is it going to take 5 years or 10 years to get to a point to say we have the first batch that is in place and moving forward? So kind of a cheeky question, but when you're looking at future milestones to say, you know, we've completed large chunks of work, how do you see that?
Well, I don't know that there is a timeline. I'm saying in next decade we're going to be working on this. I think it's safely say that it's going to take us at least a decade to do this. But it depends on how we expand the scope. People keep wanting us to do more payer guidance and other things. So it depends on whether use cases we add to it. We want to do what you tell us to do. So help us understand what is most important for you.
Yeah. The thing that I would add to that is, you know, one of the early on in my career, I was involved in the quality improvement initiatives. And so how do you know, the way that Deming would, or Schubert or others would how do you have continuous improvement? And to me, that's what we need to apply here. This is, I hope that we have milestones in the next 5 years that clinicians can say, yeah, you've made an impact on this, but I don't think we'll ever be done, as Didi was describing. I think it'll be a continuous process, and the goalposts are going to move because the data that we're using, the introduction of more genomic data that is going to now be not just in oncology, but it'll be in primary care as well. Well, how do we handle that? What makes that usable? So there will be new tasks and new challenges coming along.
Absolutely. Next question.
Hello, this is Dr. Chiranjeevi. I have 2 questions. Question 1 is regarding use cases in terms of clinical decision support system tools. And question 2 is, do you have work groups working on clinical decision support system tools?
Repeat the last one.
Which kind of codes again?
CDSS tools, clinical decision support system tools.
Clinical
Do you have any
decisions.
use case scenario? Are you planning to implement clinical decision support system tools?
So clinical decision support codes, is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a big part of what, you know, if we're going to use, if you're going to, I mean, one of the things we talk about is that usability is not just human usability, it's computational usability. Because if we're going to take the burden off of our providers and our other clinicians, we have to make things more computational. And so I think, you know, if we can give the fidelity so that not only can I receive this information, but it can be part of a clinical decision support app or other alert that's happening within the EHR. And the EHR can do that in a way that it has confidence that that's the right piece of data to trigger off of. And so I think that when we talk about the semantic aspect of it, I think in a large part it's because we want to make it computational. And that's, you know, that's the barrier. Because, you know, just we can read text and we can group things together, but boy, if you have that really specific code, you have much more confidence, I believe, in how you can use that data.
Yeah, and I have seen systems. I used to work in my vendor days. I worked for a vendor named Eclipsys. They're now Allscripts, and now they're another Veradigm. So they keep changing. But needless to say, clinical decision support was one of the foundational pieces. And I saw hospitals implement clinical decision support that really was revolutionary. So I know that there's a way to get there, but to Dr. Gregg's point, we need to think about the human usability as well as the machine processable usability so that those things go hand in hand, for sure. Thank you. Next question?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Is this live?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
You know, I'm wondering what your thoughts are. I mean, as you said, it's all about separating the noise from, you know, what's meaningful. And I'm wondering what your thoughts are about, you know, how large language models and related technologies could accelerate the process. And are you going to be considering that in your efforts, if not in phase 2, phase 3?
Yeah. Well, no, that's a great question. I'm a firm believer that I think that large language models and this, you know, this is, I see more promise in AI and machine learning now than I've ever seen in my career. Now, we all know that there's always a hype cycle and there's different pieces of it, but this is pretty exciting. I think there's kind of two parts to it. I think that the large language models can help with some of the restoring and ensuring that the semantic content is correct. But the more we have high quality semantic content, the better it is as a substrate for those large language models, is my belief. So it'll, if their starting point is here, they may get to here. But if we can get them to start here, they'll get to there. And we have to remember too, the computational cost. These GPUs are expensive. And so we don't need to be perfect at our semantic content, but let's make it as good as we can, and then it'll be a good feeder into those models. Because that is the way I think we're going to get to those efficiencies our clinicians are asking for. I don't think we can do it through one method. And to me, everything's on the table. So
I think there are two more questions. I'm not sure which one goes first.
Good morning.
Morning.
Jill DeGraff with Be Well Connected Health. And so our orientation is around the consumer front-end experience. So really interested and excited about the third use case you were talking about, the healthcare entity to consumer use case. I would like to know how operationally, and also let's just sort of pick up on the work on lab interoperability. We would love to participate and find the way you're thinking of participating in building out the proofs of concept so that this particular use case can be proven out. Could you offer some suggestions on how that work will be done?
Yes, I'll start and then you can chime in. I would challenge you to join the taking route. Go ahead and look at it at least, and there is under sequoiaproject.org at the top under resources, there's one called Data Usability Taking Root, and it kind of lets you know how you can sign up. It's like an online forum, so we get a point of contact. If you sign up as a supporter, you're just investigating, thinking about what you're going to do. If you want to sign up as an implementer to do that proof of concept that you're describing, let's do it. So I would start there because that's version 1. Get your feet wet, see how that is, and help us figure out what your lessons learned are so that we can make version 2 even better. So that would be my recommendation, but anything you'd like to add?
I think it's a great idea. We really need more of the consumer voice in our group. There is some, and I think our first focus, we did some foundational things in our first version.
There's only 2 use cases that had anything associated with healthcare entity to consumer. Unfortunately, we want more, so please come aboard.
Yeah, and I think, reflecting on the panel that Bren moderated yesterday, and was saying to her earlier just how important it is for us to ground ourselves. I don't think any of us forget that the patients are at the center, but I don't think we understand it always. And I think hearing those stories and really seeing how it becomes real, because it does help the patients and the consumers as well whenever their clinicians that are helping them are armed with better information. So it's full circle, and we need everybody at the table. So please
come aboard.
Join, yes.
All right, next one.
Dr. Gregg, you stimulated a thought in my head when you mentioned the analyzers and that kind of data. So my question is, do you have NCQA at the table talking about lab data? And the reason for that would be that for all of us that are participating in government programs, one of the major uses is quality reporting. And there is some very specific things around analyzers and calibrations and things like that that are required. So if you don't have them at the table, I would love to recommend them.
Well, I'm going to put Amber sitting right behind you in the spot. I don't know for sure off the top of my head if NCQA is. She's giving me this look like, she can look it up on our roster and see if NCQA is on there. If not, let her know how to. So,
and if you have a recommendation of someone who, or even, we can reach out. No, that's a great thought, because I think it is. Everybody has to maintain regulatory compliance and do these things. We want to make sure that we don't have any recommendations that cause downstream problems or unintended consequences. So absolutely.
I mean, honestly, that piece is one of the things that has kept us from being able to consume lab data from like a CCDA or medical record, and had to keep all lab feeds separate. Because the additional data they require. So that would be a wonderful thing to solve.
And I'm calling Amber out because she helps me every single month for all these meetings we're talking about. She's our program coordinator to help us with this. So she's your point of contact. She can help you there. Other questions over here?
Yeah, hi, Tushar from eClinical Works. Two-part question. First, back like 2-3 years ago, there was a joint document content work group between Care Equality and Commonwealth. So does your work build on top of that?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
In fact, we pulled out snippets, so we didn't, their guide was rather large and had a lot to cover. We didn't take the whole guide, we took snippets that would inform the topic categories that we had. So there are references all throughout on many of the use cases.
And that was one of the feedback that we had gotten from vendors, is they said, help us to prioritize. You know, we look at that 120-page document, we'd love to be able to do it all, but they can't. And so that's what we tried to surface. It's all good stuff, but what's kind of where can we get the most value early?
Okay.
And that was the reason.
Okay, I understood. And then the second part was like, is there any plan to work on the data segmentation for privacy? Are you planning any guidance on that front, how to handle that in the future? Because that we see across all our customers as well, wanting to be able to share data, but then also be sensitive to different types of 42 CFR or other sensitive information, behavioral health data. So any guidance that is being planned on that?
None yet, but come to the table and help us see if there's certain breadcrumbs we should be focused on, help us identify those. And I'm getting okay, sorry. So one more question. Was there another one? Anybody else have any questions for us?
We've had somebody from the audience ask a question that they were a little bit afraid to use the mic on, so this is for Dr. Gregg on behalf of somebody in the audience. Dr. Gregg, what is your favorite Harry Potter book and chapter? And also, how do you feel about HBO's taking on this monster of a brand for the next couple of years?
I love it.
So, you know, that's a tough question, but I actually have to go, my favorite Harry Potter book was the 5th one, The Order of the Phoenix. It was the longest one, and it just wasn't enjoyable. It really was a watershed place for it. And I'm excited anybody who has a take on it. I didn't read it until I was, I think, 40 years old. So I was not a childhood reader. I predated that a fair amount. But,
a little older here,
yeah.
both of us, because I was about the same age.
But yeah, so.
Any other questions? I love it. All right, so I'm saying wrap it up. Thank you for your time today. Hopefully it was valuable. We'll be here through tomorrow. Let us know if there's anything we can help with. Thanks again.